Hey there, I'm Sophie. I'm a soul that lives in the nirvana. If you think that nirvana is a terrible nothing, then you are wrong. If you try to do everything as rightly as possible, then you'll get there. But if you do something terrible to an animal, to a human, just every living being, even trees, and you don't even regret any of it, then you're gonna stay in the everlasting circle of life and you can't get any peace. Every life gets more and more difficult and harder. One time you are a hunter, another time you are the hunted. The hunted has the most difficult time surviving in this terrible world, just like me. Before I got to become the huntress, I have always been the hunted. I will tell you my story. Some things may seem clear, but some things may not at first glance. Don't let yourselves get fooled. Chapter 1. How everything began. Everything began with my birth. It was a birth like any other. My parents were happy to give birth to me. Naturally, I don't know everything in detail, but I know some facts from my parents. My parents had to stay in the hospital for some weeks, but no one could get them to stay as long as necessary. They should have stayed for 3 weeks, but they just stayed for 2. As we were at home and my parents bought me some toys, they knew that I was different from all the other children. I never wanted to play with my toys. My development, like walking and talking, took more time than usual. My parents didn't really care about that because they knew that I just needed time. I didn't want any toy they bought me. They tried everything, but when they bought me something to draw, they discovered my talent. I loved to draw more than anyone. I began drawing when I was 1.5 years old. In this age, other children don't even know what to do with a pencil and a piece of paper, so that they just start to scribble something without any form. I already drew faces. I didn't know how to show my emotions, so I started drawing them. My parents knew I was special. They also knew that I had some deficits, but that didn't disturb them. It was most important to them to strengthen and expand my skills, so they ensured that we always had enough paper and pencils at home. When I was 3 years old, I got into kindergarten. The child gardeners always wanted me to put my painting materials aside and to play with other children, but I never wanted to do that. Someday a child gardener took my things so that I couldn't draw anymore, and instead she wanted me to play with the others. As a result, I became extremely angry. I screamed and I lashed out until she gave me my things back. After she had given them back, I started drawing down gloomy pictures with monsters because of my bad mood. When the child gardener saw that, she wanted to speak with my parents immediately. She told them that I was crazy and that they should send me to a psychiatrist. My parents tried to explain to her that I liked drawing down my emotions and that I had a bad day because she took my things. Naturally, in her opinion, normal children wouldn't behave like that. My parents tried to explain to her that I was different and that drawing was my life. But she just didn't understand the fact that humans are individuals and that they can differ in many ways. After a long discussion, the gardener came to the conclusion that I couldn't fit in with the others, so that I shouldn't come to the kindergarten anymore. When we got home, I immediately continued drawing. It didn't disturb my parents because they knew if I continued going to the kindergarten, I would get broken. My parents always took photos of me while I was drawing. They said that whenever I was drawing, you could feel my emotions. 1 year later, the inevitable happened. A fire broke out. My parents were screaming, "Sophie, run! Don't worry about us! We will always be with you!" I didn't want to leave my parents behind. I didn't have anyone else. I stayed with my parents until a firefighter came to get me. I screamed and struggled to get back to my parents, but he wouldn't let me go. "Mom! Dad!" I shouted, but it felt like no one could hear me. Now I stood in front of the burning house. I could only hear the screams of my parents coming from our house. The police brought me to a children's home. I had a terrible time there. All the other children were older than me. I was always the outcast, but that didn't matter to me at all. The most important things for me were a piece of paper and a pencil. I was only allowed to draw 1 hour a day, and while I was drawing, the older children came to take all my things. I screamed, but no one could, or rather wanted to hear me. But instead, the aunt came and slapped me. She shouted at me, "Why do you always scream like that?" I shouted back at her, "Just let me alone, you stupid cow!" Then I ran into my room right crying. If you think the other children left me alone, you are extremely mistaken. They pursued me, pinched me, and they took all of my things and put them elsewhere, what I hated the most. I screamed again, and suddenly they ran away. I didn't know why they ran away, but I was glad to finally get some privacy.